G'day ladies and gentlemen, Scotty here from the Australia's Tabletop Wargaming Network, and welcome into our next installment in our How to Play Warhammer 40,000 10th Edition series. Alrighty ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the network and welcome to the next installment in our How to Play Warhammer 40,000 10th Edition series, where we're continuing to talk about how you can play the game in different ways, how to actually physically play the game following the rules and such, as well as going through building army lists. Now, the next installment that I was planning on doing was still going to be focused on terrain. However, I've had to kind of rearrange the order a little bit, but we will be still having that third portion of the terrain series coming up soon, I hope, as well. But in the meantime, I've decided to do a video where we're going to be focusing on explaining what the FAQs, errata, rules commentary, balanced data slates, and the Munitorum field manuals are, considering we've actually just had a points update to the game in the Munitorum field manual in the past couple of weeks. I thought it'd be relevant to discuss it, all these documents, and explain it for you new players out there so you can understand what each of these documents mean for your gaming experience in the game of Warhammer 40,000. But before we go any further, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank each and every one of you who has been watching our content, subscribing to the channel. Really do appreciate it, and I hope that you have been enjoying the content that we've been creating here on the network so far, and we've still got plenty more to come for you guys as well. So let's jump into the topic for today. So each of these documents that we're going to be looking at today are what Games Workshop used to provide clarity on a rules interaction within the game, or maybe adjust some missing or unclear rules, or assist with balancing the game as a whole. Now, each of these documents are updated over the course of an edition's life cycle, which is typically 3 years now, and some might be set to a regular schedule, whereas others might just be updated as needed. Now, all of these documents that we're going to be talking about are all found on the Warhammer community website under the Warhammer 40k downloads section, and you can find them all there as well. Now, the first document we're going to talk about is we are going to look at the FAQ and errata documents. Now, these are generally focused for every faction in the game will receive one of these over the course of an edition. Now, they are released after a codex has actually been released for your faction, so unfortunately the indexes aren't really getting any updates at the moment. Now, these do have the two sections. You've got your errata section and then your FAQ section. Now, the errata section of these documents addresses any issues within the codex, such as missing or misprinted rules that need to be addressed so that players can actually functionally play those units correctly on the tabletop. This FAQ portion, however, of these documents address any frequently asked questions around how a particular rules work within the codex, or a particular situation that may occur in games, and how an interaction behaves maybe between a stratagem and a certain situation on the tabletop, things like that as well. Now, both of these are quite important to ensuring that players are able to know if there are any situations like this within their codex's rules, and if there are, how to actually resolve that interaction, because before that, there may have been some confusion about how to handle it. Often you'll hear about two different perspectives, rules as written as rules as intended. Generally, they go against each other in terms of this area, and the erratas really do help, and the FAQs really do help address which way is the right way for them. Now, in these documents, any new additions will be shown in red text with more answers or errata items that have been added to the document over time throughout an edition's life cycle. Now, these documents are generally updated in batches as well over the course of an edition. As codexes get released, they will get their own FAQ and errata document after a certain period of time after that codex has been released. Generally, it's been between 2 weeks to a month afterwards, but it also depends if there are any questions that come up and such as well. So that kind of covers it for all your FAQ and errata documents. The next document we are going to be looking at is the rules commentary. Now, I would personally say for a newer player that the rules commentary is the #1 document that not just yourselves as newer players, but all players in the game need to stay up to date with. The importance of the rules commentary is that it is very similar to the FAQs and errata document for codexes, but instead it's actually aimed at clarifying rules, interactions, and adding some clarity to any issues that arise from the core rules of the game as well. Now, currently the document is actually about 20 pages long, full of rule clarifications around a variety of problematic interactions or wording clarifications, as well as defining different wording as well, such as, this turn versus your turn, that have arisen since the start of 10th edition that have required addressing for the player base. Now, right at the end of the document, it does also contain several errata for some of the core stratagems in the game as well, so that's important to bear in mind. So much like the FAQ and errata documents, these will have more items added to them over the course of time as things need to be addressed. And again, new additions will be added in red text as well. So with this document covering a lot of clarifications and issues that arise during games Warhammer 40,000, it's definitely one that you want to check regularly to make sure you're up to date with things that have been changed and that you know how any sticky situations need to be resolved. It's also one that you should always reference if a situation you don't know how to resolve comes up, because more than likely it might actually have the answer within the rules commentary itself. Now, this document is often frequently updated during an edition's life cycle as well, so it's always important to probably check it once a month in case there have been any updates to it. On the Warcom website, you can see that they've got an updated date for every document they have on the download section, so you can actually see when the most recent update for that document was. Now, the third document we're going to be talking about is another important one to keep apprised of, but not as necessary for newer plays. It's more as you're starting to play in like organized play. Maybe you're playing at your local store in an escalation league, or you're playing at starting to play at 1 day or 2 day tournaments over time. And that is the balanced data slate. Now, the balanced data slate is the main document that Games Workshop utilizes to balance the game of Warhammer 40,000. The balanced data slate is typically released twice a year in January and July. Now, this document addresses any possible game imbalances where rules are concerned, either if a rule is not working the way that they intended it to, if it's too strong within an army in the current state of the game, or it's not strong enough in the current state of the game as well. They can use this document to help balance those issues. Now, these changes are generally data-driven changes from the data that they've collected from all of the games played of Warhammer 40,000 to assess how a faction is doing in comparison to the rest of the factions of the game at that current point in time. However, despite it being data-driven, we still don't know how accurate or what the data sources are that Games Workshop uses when it comes to assess the state of the game. So always bear that in mind when you are looking to see the data that they do release in the win rates and such as well. Now, these changes are not just limited to rules for a faction, however, but also the core rules within the game that might be proving to be a bit too strong, which are generally at the start of the document, which is the first page, and the rest of the pages contain the factions. Now, currently, the balanced data slate is only 4 pages long and covers some core rules changes at the start, as I've just said, and the rest of the factions, having over half the factions of the game currently having some balance updates, whether to reduce the power or increase the power of various factions within the game, where over half of the factions have actually got some form of balance adjustment in the document. Now, they will generally release the balanced data slate along with a meta watch video discussing the changes and the current state of the game that has led to the changes that have been implemented in the new balanced data slate, and sometimes they will just carry over the previous changes unless there's changes that need to be made as well. So keep that in mind, that your faction may receive some changes one balanced data slate and they may be dramatically changed in the next data slate, or they may just not be touched any further whatsoever. So it's important to keep an eye out for when these are updated and released, as they can have an impact upon how your faction does play in the game as well. Now, the last document we're going to be talking about in today's video does go in conjunction with the balanced data slate all too often, and that is the Munitorum Field Manual, or the points update document. Now, this document contains all of the points for every unit of the game that is contained with either the indexes or codexes for the current edition of the game. However, it does not include any of the Imperial Armor or Legends units, which we'll be looking at in a future video to kind of explain what those are for you as well. Now, the points are updated more frequently than the balanced data slate, being every 3 months, with the most recent one actually being released a few weeks ago, which means they are actually updated in January, April, July, and October each year during an edition's life cycle. Now, they are, as I've said, released in conjunction with the balanced data slates in January and July as well, so that they're able to synchronize the points fixes alongside any faction balances as well, and keep those points in line with any particular units they might balance. So that's something to also be aware of during those 2 times of the year. Now, in this document, they will show what units in each army have actually had their points decreased and increased in the document, with green showing decreases in points costs and red showing increases in points costs as well. Now, there may be times where your army of choice will have a lot of points changes, or they may have no changes whatsoever. Much like the balanced data slate, these points changes are driven by the data of the current state of the game as well. Now, this is the other document that will have a MetaWatch article made about it throughout the year, in addition to a video explaining the context around the points changes that are being made and why they are being made in that manner. So this is the other document that you'll want to keep an eye out for throughout the edition's life cycle, as these points changes may impact your army list through either the points increases of the units that you are taking, or points decreases, allowing you to take more units in your army. So that's something that you want to stay up to date with as best as possible. And so for that, ladies and gentlemen, that covers the core documents that you are going to want to keep up to date with when it comes to playing Warhammer 40,000 in 10th edition, in terms of your FAQs, rules commentary, and balances of the game. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for joining us for another video here on the ATW, and really hope that this was quite an informative video and did help explain some of these documents for you newer players out there to understand what is actually going on with these documents and the importance of them throughout an edition's life cycle and the relevancy for your armies in particular. Now, if you did enjoy this video, feel free to hit it with a like. If you have any feedback on these style of videos, feel free to let us know down in the comment section below. And if you want to catch more of the content that we do create here at the ATW, and feel free to hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell so you'll be notified as to when we are releasing more content here on the network, whether it's more videos in this series or from our From Sprue to Tabletop series, or maybe some tournament coverage and such as well. And if you do want to catch us live where we're doing hobbying sessions and you want to interact and ask more questions as well of myself, feel free to head over to the Twitch channel, which is Australis TWN over there. Hit it with a follow as well, and make sure you've got that notification button turned on there so you're notified as to when we may be doing hobbying streams throughout the week, or tournament previews, or live tournament coverage as well. And I also want to give a massive shout out to our Twitch subscribers and Ko-Fi members as well. Your financial support really does help us to be able to continue to create the videos that we are creating, and support us to get to more tournaments in the Australian Warhammer 40,000 tournament scene. And if you do want to consider supporting us, feel free to check out the Ko-Fi that is linked down in the description below, where you can support us from as little as $5 Australian a month, which really does go a long way in terms of assisting us with our gear, being able to produce these videos, and being able to get to more tournaments as well. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to catch you in the next video.